Hola, ¿qué tal? Muy buenas noches. Soy Paulina Mercado. Bienvenido a Azteca Opinión. Esta noche Sabina Berman entrevista a la famosa escritora de memorias, Piper Kerman, quien las circunstancias de la vida la llevaron a vivir 13 meses en prisión. De ahí se inspira para escribir su famosa obra Orange, que luego fue transformada en una serie televisiva. En la entrevista con Sarmiento, el periodista retoma la profunda investigación que ha realizado el gobierno con el tema de Ayotzinapa. Opina y da sus puntos de vista sobre las declaraciones de Abarca. Un tema que a todos nos interesa, el combate a la corrupción. Cómo acabar con un problema estructural, cómo fomentar una cultura de la legalidad. Desde luego son preguntas a quemarropa. Y en Al Filo, Ana María Lomelí, con su estilo característico, platica con Martí Báteres Guadarrama, presidente del Comité Ejecutivo Nacional del Movimiento de Regeneración Nacional, Morena, para hablar de un tema que a todos nos interesa, las elecciones. No olvide que si se perdió uno de sus programas favoritos, puede seguirnos a través de nuestras redes sociales. ¡Comenzamos!
I became involved in a relationship with somebody who was involved with narcotics. And I found out that I was going to be in court and that I was going to go to prison. Is that those women are the protagonist, and that's why people are passionate and obsessed with them.
Estamos este mediodía deslumbrante, por eso los lentes oscuros, en la explanada de la Ciudad de las Ideas, en la ciudad de Puebla, con Piper Kerman. ¿Cómo estás, Piper?
Bueno.
¿Hablamos en español?
No, not so good.
Okay. So you were born into a family of educators, lawyers, doctors. You went to Smith College. And you ended in jail. How did that happen?
After I graduated from university and I went to a very wonderful small women's college, you know, the first women's institution in which I was held, I became involved in a relationship with somebody who was involved with narcotics. And she was very compelling, older woman, very seductive in many ways, and I followed her around the world.
How old were you?
I was 22, and eventually the day came when she said, I need you to do something, and she was scared. I could tell that she was scared by what was going on, and so I was scared too. And she said, I need you to carry this bag of money from Chicago to Brussels. And so I did that, and actually I was so scared after I did it that was sort of the wake-up call. And not so long after that, I ended that relationship. I went back to the United States, and I tried to get my life back together. And many years passed before the knock on the door came. And I found out that I was going to be in court and that I was going to go to prison.
Oh, God. The FBI? Was it the FBI?
It was actually the Treasury Department because they are responsible for customs.
Okay. So you went to jail. You were there 13 months, and then you wrote the book.
Yes, I came home from prison in 2005, and everyone wanted to know, everyone that I knew wanted to know all about the experience.
Right.
And it's a very convoluted, complicated story in some ways, and it's a very simple survival story in other ways. I hoped that if I talked about my own experience, if I wrote about my own experience, that at least in the United States and maybe in other places as well, people might think differently about prisons and prisoners and who are these people who we are locking away and why, what are the things that drive people's involvement in crime or disorder, and what really happens behind the walls of a prison, because the world of a prisoner jail is very intentionally hidden from the public view. So, you know, people are very fascinated.
And how did it become a TV show?
Well, the book was published in 2010, and I was very grateful to find readers for the book. I was very grateful that the book was well received. And one of the readers was this woman named Genji Cohan, and she is a longtime television genius. And she produced the television show Weeds, which was on Showtime for 8 seasons. And someone said, Genji Cohan loves your book. And I was like, wow, that is crazy. So it was arranged for us to have lunch, and we had a long lunch, and we talked about all kinds of things. And at the end of the lunch, she said, I really would like to do this as my next project. And I was stunned by that. And it was really just very much a lot of good luck happening, because about a year later, Netflix came into the picture, and then things started to move very, very quickly.
Did you work with her?
I am a consultant on the show, and what that means is that I answer questions. So if Genji has questions, I answer those questions. If the writers who work for her have questions, I just try and answer them to the best of my ability. Sometimes they come up with questions I can't ask, like how do you rob a bank? And in that case, I say, I don't know, but I know somebody who does.
And how far is it from your real story?
I sometimes say that they take the book and they put it in a blender, and they put a lot of extra ingredients in there, and they press liquefy. So the show is an adaptation from the book, and so there are many things that are changed, and then there will be things that are directly from the book, and that's a very fascinating experience for any writer, I'm sure.
Well, the Piper of TV looks very much like you.
Well, that is very flattering, because Taylor Schilling is 15 years younger than me, so.
Well, you really look alike. Well, you're a very good-looking woman. I'm not the first person to tell you so, but do you feel a connection with her?
Oh, Taylor is wonderful. I mean, I am just so impressed. It's a challenging role because, you know, the thing that I think is very provocative about the show is not necessarily all the sex. I think what's provocative about the show is that they have very serious themes, and then they analyze them with comedy, and I think that is very hard to pull off. I don't think anyone but Genji Cohan pulls that off so well, and so Taylor has a big challenge in doing both the drama and also the comedy, and I think she does a really good job.
Now, it has everything to do with Netflix, isn't it? Because, I mean, it's so daring compared to other shows.
I think that what is wonderful about Netflix is that Netflix just seeks out people who they think are creative and says, what is the project that you are dreaming of doing?
And there are no limits?
I mean, they are really great to work with.
But there's no censorship?
You have to ask Genji that, but I don't get the sense that there's a lot of censorship.
No, I don't think so. What is so interesting in the show is what it does to female identity. No, it goes much more beyond to what we've seen in TVs, in TV or even in movies.
Yes, no? I think so too.
Could you tell us how you see that transgressing the usual limits of what we call femininity?
Right. Well, so often when we see a television show or a movie, the female characters are there in the story in relation to the male protagonist.
Exactly.
But what is amazing about the Netflix series Orange is the New Black is that you have not just Piper Chapman, not that just that protagonist, you have a whole cast of female protagonists. And every single one of those women has their own story, they have their own sense of agency, they are trying to survive in their own unique way. And I think that is what the audience is responding to, is that those women are the protagonist, and that's why people are passionate and obsessed with them.
And Piper starts like being a well-behaved woman, nice person. Well, the show. And every hour, we see her transgress, and we really are preoccupied. What is going to happen to her? Is she going to get punished? Because we come from a patriarchal morality, right? And she transgresses a lot. Do you enjoy that?
I mean, I think that female transgression is really interesting because, as you say, you know, there's all kinds of limits that are sometimes put on women. And when women refuse to accept those limits, it's very, very interesting. Whether you talk about sexual limits, or whether you talk about legal limits, or whether you talk about the limits of the feminine role, I think it's really just fascinating when women sort of refuse to do that or subvert those limits.
Now, the sex that there is in the show has to be lesbian, because they're jailed.
There's sex in the show that is not lesbian.
In the, how do you say, flashbacks?
The flashbacks,
yeah.
but also sometimes some of those prison guards who are men.
That's right.
Yeah, of course. And that's accurate.
True.
That's true in every women's prison and jail.
Yeah, but let me go back to lesbianism. It is like very new to see that. And then they don't get punished.
Well, sometimes they get punished. I mean, I think that what is wonderful about the show is that it shows you this spectrum of human sexuality. So, there are definitely characters who are completely heterosexual, and there are characters that are completely homosexual, and then there are characters who are all kinds of in between. And that's really interesting.
And then you have this Afro-American group and the Latinos. For us, the Latinos, we like very much that part of the show.
Oh, the
Latino gang.
Are so fantastic. I think all of the actresses are wonderful, but I think that one of the most amazing things that Genji has done is created such rich characters for, African-American actresses, for Latina actresses, again, where they get to be protagonists and they have very powerful stories and very central stories, as opposed to being someone's girlfriend or wife, or, some white woman's best friend. These women's stories are primary.
Were you on the set when it was shot?
The show is shot in New York City, and I live in New York City. So I get to visit the set, and they're very sweet, and they sort of are very open arms. And those visits are really just about cheerleading and, visiting and saying hi. But it's always really exciting. It's always a little bit unbelievable when I go there and I see how many people are working on the show. It takes hundreds and hundreds of people to make 1 hour of television. And so that's kind of astonishing in and of itself.
And do you enjoy their freedom, or are you protective about your material when you say like, hey, that's really off, I don't want that?
What is important to me is that the world of Litchfield Prison be a realistic world.
Is it?
I think it is, yes. And I think that the thing about prison life is that really crazy things happen sometimes behind the wall of a prison or a jail. So as long as they keep that world realistic, they have a lot of license to create very crazy storylines that seem outrageous. And sometimes people say to me, oh, I saw this thing on the show, that couldn't possibly be true. And I say, oh, that's from the book. That's real.
Chicken episode.
The chicken episode is not from the book, but when the writers told me they were going to do that, I started laughing because there was an incident with a chipmunk while I was incarcerated where a chipmunk sort of invaded the dorms. It's very cute, but some women were very scared of it and some women really loved it. And it had this entire impact on all these women, just like the chicken does. So when they told me that storyline, I started to laugh and I told them about the chicken.
It made sense. It made sense. Is it going for a third season?
We are almost done shooting the third season. Yeah, we have been shooting. They went back to work right away in the summer. And so they've been working very, very hard. And the third season is going to be fantastic. There are new storylines which go in very surprising directions, new characters, of course. But I can't tell you much more because then I'd be punished.
You would?
Yes.
You have a confidence, how do you call that? You in your contract it says you cannot tell what is going to happen?
Just common sense tells me that I would be punished.
Right. Are you writing something more?
I am about to start work on a new book, which will stay focused on the criminal justice system. So soon, like maybe next year, I'll be able to start working on that. I'm very excited.
So congratulations. I think that Orange is the New Black is great TV.
Thank you.
I think TV hasn't been any better.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.